weekend. It's World Menopause Day. Instagram. What's up, Steph David? Well, I got to stop calling you Steph David. But it's World Menopause Day for those that don't know. It's also World Menopause Month this month. And as a menopause-informed personal trainer and menopause-informed nutrition coach, I wanted to bring a message today of all days because it's important that we shed the stigma about menopause, generally speaking, but it's also important that we cut through the misinformation and the disinformation. There's plenty of it, as I'm sure you all know, and this is a question that I get a lot from clients and potential clients, the women that I'm privileged to work with. As a coach who is client-centered and very mindful of what his messaging may be because of the population that I serve, I have a tendency to shy away from all conversations regarding fat loss, fat gain, weight loss, because I think that there's such an overwhelming amount of information about that, an argument about that, and misinformation about that. And I don't like to get caught up in that mix too much. It's so funny that Steph's here because Steph and I had a conversation about this and how specifically, you don't know Steph David, go follow her. She's in the chat here. But it's so funny that she's here because we've had conversations about the duty, responsibility, and sort of the self-management of having these weight loss, change your body, fat loss conversations, and how important it is to us to be able to sort of manage ourselves. But I'm going to have that conversation today. I look at this like adolescent sex, right? If you're going to think about it anyway, and if you're going to do it anyway, I want you to get information from a credible source so that you can make great decisions about what you will or won't do. So I want to talk specifically about the weight gain and difficulty in weight loss that usually intersects with women once they get into that 40 plus range, right? And 40 plus in fitness land is pretty much a euphemism. It's coded language for the menopause spectrum. So first I'm going to start there and address that. And then I'm going to tell you what I'm going to go over because I'm going to get this whole thing sandwiched up by 30 minutes. My hand to the holy. I'm going to get this in and out. So first of all, the stages of menopause. And I say this because I have so many interactions with women who have never been taught this. They've never had this information. So you're looking at 3 stages of menopause, possibly 4. The first stage, well, we'll say 5. The first stage is premenopause. And that just simply means that you're in your reproductive years. Estrogen, progesterone, flowing like they always did. You're in your teens, 20s, 30s. Everything's going along swimmingly, right? That's premenopause. The next stage is perimenopause. And perimenopause is really where things get sort of fucked up real bad. Pardon my French. But this is the stage that for a lot of women is the most concerning, the most annoying, because you have wild fluctuations in what your body's doing. So sometimes we think about the menopause transition as estrogen sort of doing this, right? And that's not at all the way that it happens for most women. It's more like this. It's the roller coaster at your favorite theme park, the one that's got a corkscrew, but it's also got a loop and it's got an edge that you fall off, right? That's what the perimenopause spectrum is like. And there are 3 things that are really challenging here. Number one, when you say menopause, people think about, probably rightfully so, they think about elder years, right? They're thinking about what's up. Yes, environmental triggers are a big issue. But when you talk about anything that ends in menopause, oftentimes we think, oh, 65-year-old lady, right? And by the way, I know a lot of dynamic, muscular, incredible women in their 60s, 70s, and beyond. So don't allow me to typecast any group of women here. But we think that way. So one of the problems with the perimenopausal thing is that you may go with symptoms that are in line with that, and your doctor may refute. Oh, it's a little early to think about that, right? The second thing in that same spectrum, the duality of that coin, is that you can go into, you can start to get information and have feelings and feel symptoms, and you yourself can discriminate because of your youthful age and say, no, it's a bit too early for that. It must be something else. But oftentimes this is showing up sort of in that 35, 36 to 40 window of time for women. So that's problem number one with perimenopause. Problem number two is that so many women are taking an oral contraceptive that masks the menstrual cycle. So you can't tell if your cycle's off really because you have that withdrawal bleed at the end of your cycle of oral contraceptive. So since you're not able to properly gauge how much your cycle is fluctuating or not, you can't look for your own symptoms. And sort of the third thing is just blatantly unaware. We just don't talk about this enough for people to be able to connect the dots. And that's problematic. Actually, it's pretty shitty, but that's problematic. So perimenopause, things start to fluctuate. Now, there can be two halves of the perimenopause spectrum, like one half we call early perimenopause. You start to see, if you're able to see, you start to see sort of bleed pattern fluctuations in your menstrual cycle of days-ish to a week, right? 5 or 6 or 7 days off, a little heavier, a little lighter. That second half of the perimenopause spectrum, we see wilder fluctuations. We're talking months at a time. I've had clients that had their bleed for, weeks and weeks straight, or didn't have it for weeks and weeks straight. So you see a more significant fluctuation in this time of life, and that's not unusual, although it may often go unnoticed. So that's perimenopause. Menopause, technically, just a day. It's the date upon which you have not had a menstrual cycle for 12 consecutive months. That day is menopause, just that day. Everything after that is postmenopause. And typically your estrogen starts to flatline from that point on, and that's the hormonal profile that you're carrying in perpetuity. And that's notwithstanding any interventions that you may take on, like menopause hormone therapy, et cetera, et cetera. That's a discussion for another time, because tonight what we're going to talk about is the weight loss and weight gain system that's happening with the menopause transition that so many women in their late 30s and 40s through 50s start to notice. So we're going to talk about this from a nutritional perspective, right? In terms of solution. We're also going to talk about this from an exercise perspective, because my expertise runs in both lanes as a menopause-informed personal trainer and a menopause-informed nutrition coach. Losing my words. So let's talk first about the weight gain and what may or may not be happening, because menopause expresses itself differently through every woman's body. I mean, literally, the woman beside you, the woman that's your sister, the woman that's your mom and your auntie, the woman that's your coworker can have a wildly different experience than what your experience is. So by no means is any of what I'm about to say tonight a guarantee that this is your experience. And obviously, let's get this out of the way, because I don't know if you noticed or not, but I'm a cisgendered heterosexual male, right? I have no interaction with either the physical, social, psychological effects of the menopause transition. It doesn't affect me personally, so I can't speak anecdotally, unless I'm speaking through the lens of my clientele, right? I'm just a guy on a live broadcast trying to help a few ladies out there. That's all I'm doing. This is of interest to me because my mother suffered one of the key conditions of menopause, which is cardiovascular disease and or death. And that's 1 out of every 3 women on the planet. And that rate skyrockets when you get into the spectrum of menopause. So my mother had a massive stroke. My sister, who was menopausal, suffered from anxiety and depression to the extent that I realize now why she chose to drink that alcohol, get behind the wheel of that car, and kill herself in a single car accident with a tree. I did not realize at the time, because I was not in this profession, I did not realize how the stress of taking care of my mother, the stress of an ill husband, and the stressors of the menopause transition and what that can do psychologically affected my sister for all those years. I wish I could go back and serve better, but I'm here serving you now, hopefully to help through that transition. So let's talk about the weight gain. and what might be happening, realizing that this is not a monolithic experience for all women who are going to go through menopause, but a few things. Number one that we know for sure, and I shared this in the study earlier on my Instagram page, we know for sure it's not an issue of your metabolism slowing down, right? So, and that could be disappointing for some. Some of y'all might want to at me. You know, you might want to print out a picture of my face and throw darts at it. Ren, what the hell are you talking about? Obviously, I'm gaining weight because of menopause. No, bluntly speaking, that's not the cause in and of itself. We know that the metabolism holds steady from age 20 to age 60. And any sort of reduction or slowing down of the metabolic rate and naturally is somewhere around 0.7% as we get to age 60. So that's not the reason specifically for any weight gain that you may experience. We also know that when women are given menopause hormone therapy, some people call it HRT, hormone replacement therapy. I try to stay away from the replacement thing because that's not really what's happening. Nothing's broken, so we're not fixing anything. But we can give therapy to something that you're experiencing that's very natural in any case. But we know when women are administered menopause hormone therapy, weight loss is not a function of the result of that type of therapy. So simply taking on the estrogen that may be waning over time is not, it ain't doing it. It's not solving it. Neither is that helping with the muscle that's lost. Specifically, there's no increase in muscle tone or muscle availability or ability to create muscle when we understand that as well factually. So the lack of estrogen is not the cause of increased body fat, but there are some conditions that happen during menopause that make it more likely to gain body fat. Let's get into that. Let's dig that rabbit hole while we're here together. So number one, we're looking at the fact that you may have a little bit more of a problem with insulin sensitivity. So if you're not familiar with the sort of the terminology of being insulin sensitive or insulin resistant, fundamentally what insulin does is it signals your body to take the sugar, for lack of a better term, glucose, take the sugar out of your blood and take it like into your muscle or into your body fat or into your liver. So when you don't have great insulin sensitivity, when your body's not sensitive to the message, hey, take this glucose into the muscles, and your body's like, what'd you say? Hey, take this glucose into your, sorry, I can't hear you. So you got a little deafness when it comes to insulin, your ability to hear, your body's ability to hear the signal that insulin is saying, hey, I really need you to take this blood out of the bloodstream. That's not good. Put that glucose in the muscles where it belongs. So we know that insulin sensitivity lowers during this spectrum. It's got something to do with the loss of estrogen. Estrogen is a later of making sure that you're relatively insulin sensitive. You want to be sensitive so that insulin can signal your body to take the sugar out of your blood and put it into your tissues, for lack of a better term. That's problematic because a lot of that blood sugar, due to the fact that your body's not really responding to it, a lot of that blood sugar stays in your bloodstream. Hello pre-diabetes, hello diabetes, hello probably extra, what we call adipose, but extra body fat around the midsection, right? So that's one thing we know. The other thing that we know is that at this point in your life, you're going to have a harder time keeping the hard-earned muscle that you have on your body, right? And that's important because that helps your metabolic rate. So secondarily to menopause, something's happening that may affect your metabolic rate, and that could be just the loss of muscle altogether. So that's problematic. We know a few other things too. One big thing is that there tend to be more stressors during this time in your life. Look, you might have a college kid who's awesome. You could have a college kid who's a bit of an asshole, right? You may be taking care of an ailing or aging or dying parent, right? That's stress. You probably have the most responsibility on your occupation that you've ever had, right? That's stress. Notice I did not also say the most money. another discussion for another time, wage gap. But you also probably have the stress of not quite being in the golden years of your marriage. You may be in the valley, in the sort of the mundane place of your marriage, and that's not that it's a bad marriage. It's just you lovingly get on each other's nerves, but you may find your spouse harder to tolerate during this menopause transition, because another thing that can happen that's very, very common is that you kind of might have a tendency to fly off the handle a lot more than you used to, because that estrogen is helping you regulate, the cognitive function, right? So you've got more stress, you've got a little bit more insulin resistance, you've got less muscle, probably less energy. There's an overwhelming sort of fatigue that I find that my clients that are going through the menopause transition are hit with. And I mean, like, I can't get off the couch fatigue. So fundamentally what's happening typically during this process that can lead to the weight gain is you're not sleeping as well, right? You're a lot more stressed. You got a lot more responsibility, probably have a lot less time. You're a lot less energetic, right? You've got a bit of an issue with insulin sensitivity. You've definitely got an issue maintaining the hard-earned muscle that you've worked your life for if you've been exercising regularly, or if you're just sort of muscular by definition. All these things can lead to extra weight loss. And what's even more significant is that sometimes for some women, their body fat distribution redistributes itself, right? It's like, now we're not, hey guys, look, we're not shipping to the hips and thighs anymore. We got a new work order from estrogen. We got a new boss. And we're starting to ship to the tummy now. So you and Barry get in the back, take the work order and ship most of what we got to the tummy. All of a sudden, the body fat that used to go to your hips and your thighs and maybe your chest is now, for some reason, going right in between your sternum and your belly button, or better yet, your sternum and your pubic bone, for lack of a better term. And all of a sudden, body is fat going to my stomach, and I hate this planet, right? And I totally get it, right? So you may find yourself going from what we call a gynoid fat distribution, which is more pear-shaped, more hourglass-ish, to an android fat distribution, which is more guyish, male-driven, and guys usually store their fat first in their belly. So that can be alarming in a way that it makes it the consistent incremental fat gain that you've always had going on. It makes it more noticeable because now it's going to a place where you normally, maybe you specifically, normally haven't had it going. So those are the things that we need to consider in terms of the gaining of weight during the menopause transition. But let's talk about solution, because let's see, I've got about 10 or 11 good minutes. So from a nutritional perspective, here are the tips that I would give for any woman who wants to reduce her overall body fat during the menopause transition. The first tip I would give you is you got to hang your hat on protein, right? There's no way around it. One of the things that's specific about the menopause transition in terms of how your body sort of processes foods is, number one, you have a harder time absorbing protein from protein sources in order to create what we call protein synthesis, right? And that's not like a Weird Al Yankovic synthesizer. When I talk about protein synthesis, I mean your body's ability to take the protein that you eat and make a little muscle, right? So that's a challenge. Another thing nutritionally is the fact that your body has increased its uptake of lipids, of fats, but it decreases its ability to get rid of them, to process them. And this is really tricky, man. And then the third thing is that you may find that you are a bit hungrier during your menopause transition. And this is due to the fact that you may have a reduction in oxytocin, right? They call it like the love hormone. And it's one of the reasons why you may not eat as much when you're in a super new, exciting relationship, because that love hormone secreting, it can suppress appetite a little bit. So as estrogen is withdrawing, so too is that particular transmitter, and you may find that you're a bit hungrier more of the time than you used to be. So the nutritional intervention that I look at is getting quality protein. Protein, why? Because you already have a difficult time taking up protein to make the muscle that you're losing. It's a lose-lose in the muscle category because number one, you have a harder time taking it up and making muscle, and number two, you have a harder time keeping it. Your body, because the estrogen is withdrawing, it just wants to, it's not even like, I don't want to go by muscle's house. I just want to be by myself, right? The same way we start to feel as humans, you know, your estrogen and muscle, they become estranged friends. Estrogen just doesn't come around anymore to see muscle, and muscle's just like, I don't need to be here. There's no attention for me here anymore. So that's problematic, but also getting that protein throughout the course of the day can keep you better satiated. If you're able to get protein early in the day and you're able to combine that with fiber, you'll find that your blood sugar levels stay a little bit more steady and you don't feel as hungry throughout the day. The second nutritional intervention is covering that dead zone. There seems to be a dead zone with women 40 plus, particularly if they exercise, where you may not eat in the morning because you like to do the fasted training. I may circle back around to that if I have time, but that's a no-no at this point in your life. In any case, you may do that, and then maybe have like a breakfast after that, some protein after that, a big protein shake. And then I find, man, like from 11 to sort of 5-ish, I find so many women that just don't eat during the day. They just do not eat. It may be because distracted with work, maybe because, I don't know, maybe because they haven't planned to eat. Maybe they feel guilty eating. Maybe because at this point in your life in the menopause transition, you feel like as if you're gaining weight, and the best thing to do is double down on calorie restriction. But they just don't eat during the course of the day, and that can lead you to something called low energy availability. A few signs of that are sort of nagging injuries. You know, you have a lot of recurring soft tissue injuries, probably not properly fueled throughout the day for the things that you need to take care of. You'll wake frequently at night. This is different from night sweats and hot flashes at night or hot flushes. It's just the fact that your body's sort of hungering itself awake. It releases a shot of cortisol to make you get up because it's stressed and underfed. So that's another symptom you can see in low energy availability, not being properly fueled. A third thing is just dead tired during the course of the day. Like you are just bone dead exhausted. As soon as you get off work, you want a nap. You're struggling to make it through that 2 to 4 o'clock hour, pounding coffee just to stay awake. You're not fueled properly. And another thing that we see in a state of low energy availability is that when you do eat at night, it triggers your body to eat more. So you're supremely snacky after you have your dinner. You need to hit that pantry hard. You're running through that thing like a streaker at an NFL game halftime show. Like you just gotta get out there and run naked down the 50-yard line, and you just gotta get into that pantry after you eat. So this can be another fundamental flaw, is reducing your fuel throughout the course of the day. That this can be helpful in helping you maintain a body weight that you feel more comfortable with. In addition to that, you want to stay away from bookending your food. You know, early in the morning I eat, and then I don't eat again until late in the evening. That's problematic. And there's always that relationship with alcohol. There are no symptoms of the menopause transition that are improved by alcohol consumption. I am absolutely not saying you can't have your wine, you can't have your alcohol. That's not what I'm saying at all. That's not a decision that I need to make for anyone as a coach. What I am saying is maybe you take another look at your relationship with it and you decide, because for some, your vision for this time of your life is to be very, very social, spend great quality time with your friends and your family, and that happens over a glass or two of wine. If that's your vision for your menopause journey, man, I love that. I'm going to be super social and have my house open and have all my friends here. Man, that's a good prioritization. We just can't have it both ways. If your menopause journey vision is, I want to maintain a specific aesthetic, a specific physical aesthetic, then you may find that the choice of alcohol clashes with that vision. Or, as I just said, it could be very much in line with that vision. Either way, it's okay. None of my business. I'm Kermit sipping Lipton tea. But you may want to consider that. Another thing that you may want to consider at this time nutritionally is that you may cut off the feeding, an hour and a half or 2 hours before you go to sleep. Not only because of the fact that we don't typically make great decisions for food late at night, but due to the fact that eating and going to bed could be problematic. It could cause some issues with sleep disruption. And if you're underslept, it doesn't make you less hungry the next day. If you're underslept, you don't make better food choices the next day. If you're underslept, you don't get great results from your training and whatever nutrition you've endeavored into. So these are things to think about, right? Let's move this thing over to the other side, though, the exercise component of attempting weight loss during the menopause transition. And a lot of this doesn't feel natural. It feels counterintuitive, right? And I get that. I'm just working with the science. I'm just working with the science as I understand it, as it's been explained to me through the certifications that I've taken. So don't at me, bro. I'm just trying to give it to you straight. So if you're looking at the exercise component, one thing that's very, very clear, and I talked about this in the study earlier today on my Instagram as well. One thing that's clear is the fact that strength training is going to be paramount. Like, strength training kind of needs to be your jam. And as Dr. Stacy Sims so eloquently puts it, you need to lift heavy shit, right? Heavy's relative, but probably gone. Disclaimer before I even say this. If you're exercising versus not exercising, you're killing it, right? I'm going to talk about what's optimal here, but that doesn't mean throw what you do in it, because it's not. Because some jackass on the internet that Nike had said it wasn't good enough, so I might as well not do anything at all. Let's not go there, Marsha. Let's be sane here. So strength training is going to be paramount for you. It's a big freaking deal as you go through this transition, because I just told you, I just said it. You're having a hard time maintaining muscle mass. Muscle wants to flee your body, right? And you're having a hard time uptaking protein to make new muscle. And you're probably, quite frankly, not eating enough. You're not fueled enough for what you're asking your body to do. So the things that you used to do in your 20s and 30s, you're trying them and they backfire. You double down on it, it backfires worse. You triple down on it and it backfires again, and you say nothing works. It's just a lack of understanding of the science. That's all it is. So strength training becomes paramount. And we want to lift relatively heavy. Heavy's a relative term. And we want to do that at 2 or 3 times per week, right? So sort of gone are the days when you got the little blue dumbbells and you're Jane Fonda sizing or whatever it is she used to do. I remember they used to have Mouser size on the Disney Channel when I was a kid. That was awesome. I used to Mouser size in the morning. But you want strength training. You want compound movements. That just means that you're moving multiple joints on your body at once. Think a squat or think a chest press or a push-up or a pull down or a pull up if you're capable of doing it. Those things become important. We need the strength training because what estrogen used to do to keep our body in the condition that hopefully that you preferred is it controlled the intensity of a muscle contraction. Two proteins called actin and myosin, they sort of think of them like a zipper. They zip up and contract the muscle. Estrogen's not there to do that anymore. Think about estrogen as a hormone as the batteries in a remote control, right? So you've got a remote control. The remote control is your program, what you've always done. Your body is a television set, right? So your body's a TV. You push a certain button on the remote control, the TV does a certain thing, but now the batteries have died. That was the estrogen. The estrogen was the batteries in the remote. So now you push all the buttons that you used to, and the TV does nada. TV's like, you ain't my real daddy. So the TV doesn't listen to you at all. So now you've got to get up and you've got to go manually turn it. You've got to push the buttons on the television. This is why the strength training at a higher level of intensity becomes important because we are manually doing to the muscle what estrogen used to help us do. We've got to get up and go press the buttons ourselves now. It becomes crucial that we do that. And one of the ways that we do that is we lift heavier for a lesser amount of repetitions. And we work our way up to that. You don't need to start at a powerlifting phase, but we work our way up to that. But strength training becomes important because another study that I shared earlier today says that they put groups of women, menopausal women, into a study, 8-week study. No, it was a 3-month study. They exercised with intensity for 3 months, heavier lifting, and the result was greater insulin sensitivity and effectively reduction of overall body fat, but more specifically in the midsection. That's a win, right? So strength training becomes a big part of your weight loss protocol. Cardiovascular conditioning is shifting. We want it to be more polarized now. What I mean by polarized, I mean one needs to be way over in this corner and one needs to be way over in this corner. The sort of, now as I say this, because I know how these things go, as I say this, I want you to realize that I am not in the convincing business. So if I say anything that's antithetical to what you love to do and you want to keep right on doing it, I am not here to change your mind. You know, I'm going to talk about some versions of cardiovascular exercise that are less in line with having success in menopause and the menopause spectrum based on the research. This is not a personal assault on your choice for exercise. And again, if you think to yourself, well, I do that every day and it works for me, keep doing it. Like, don't change because of what I'm saying here, and that's not my goal here. So, in terms of cardiovascular conditioning, you want it polarized. You want to be at a high intensity level for a short period of time, either high intensity interval training or sprint interval training, or you want it to be very, very passive cardiovascular conditioning, a nice, lovely walk on a beautiful day outside, some Tai Chi, maybe some yoga, lesser intensity things, but you want to stay away from sort of that middle zone where it's just a good sweaty sessions, but it's neither true high intensity. If you're doing something high intensity, you're doing it for 30 seconds at most. If you can do it longer than that, it's not high intensity. It's certainly not sprint intensity. So if you go hard for an hour, you were going moderate. And it was hard because of the amount of time that you were doing it, right? So true sprint interval training, true high intensity interval training, which we know does a few things, helps with the insulin sensitivity, helps with the overall reduction of body fat, particularly around the midsection, helps release brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, which helps with the mental clarity because menopause brain is a real thing also. So the studies show that. This isn't Ren's opinion. Or you're doing low intensity cardio because it brings down your stress levels typically. You want your cardio to be in one of those two places. In addition to that, you want to do some type of jump training, some type of impact training where there's ground force applied to your body, plyometrics, you know, jumping forward, jumping sideways, jumping backwards, multiple planes of movement when you're leaving the ground, because that's going to help improve your overall bone density, which is another problematic issue during this time of life. So, unfortunately, running doesn't do it. Multi-plane running does it, like if you're chasing a tennis ball or a pickleball around or a racquetball. But running in of itself isn't enough stress, and it doesn't have multiple planes, so it doesn't do it. And the other thing that you want to do here is you want to look to power, bursts of power, right? And the plyometrics will help you with that as well. But you want to see how quickly you can produce a lot of force, whether that's punching a bag, right? Whether that's jumping, whether that's sprinting, whether that's a sort of an Olympic snatch, right? A snatch and clean or jerk, things that you do in the Olympic spectrum. So when you think about the possibility of reducing overall body fat in the menopause transition, 40 plus, is it possible? Absolutely it is. Is it all easy? Absolutely not. And might it require you to incorporate some things that are that feel counterintuitive because of what you've always done before to get certain results. These things are not like those things. That reminds me of Sesame Street. One of these kids is doing their own thing. Three of these kids. But might it be something that is unusual for you? Absolutely. But if you have a menopause informed professional that you're working with, whether that's your doctor, whether that's your OBGYN, whether that's a pelvic physiotherapist, whether that's an endocrinologist, you name it, you'll find that even though your efforts may feel odd to you, you'll find better success with the effort that you're putting forth. And that's what we all want, right? Don't we just all want a great return on our investment? Or do we want to be entrenched in our beliefs about what worked for the previous version of our body that no longer exists and continue to sort of tread the same water? If you need a menopause-informed specialist, whether that be any type of doctor, specialist, et cetera, they've rebranded their name now, but you can go to the North American Menopause Society. If you Google that, it still comes up, NAMS, NAMS. And there's a section that says for women. Obviously, it's all for women, but this section says for women as opposed to being for practitioners or for doctors. There's a section for citizens, civilians, right? And you can click on that and you can type in your zip code and they will tell you who the menopause informed medical practitioners are in your area. Because again, I'm going to end this the way that I started it out. I make a good time too. I'm going to end this the way I started it out. You may run into a professional that doesn't have a lot of knowledge in this category. Only about 20% of all medical schooling for gynecologists involves menopause education. They don't get a lot of information about that through their schooling unless they seek out more information through continuing studies. So shockingly, and this is really some bullshit, but shockingly, it's not uncommon to run into a medical professional that just kind of doesn't have a clue. They just don't know what to tell you about these things. And at the risk of feeling unprepared or ignorant about a subject, depending on the human, all humans are different, and there are different kind of humans in every profession. So I'm not talking about all medical professionals, but you could very easily get information that is misinformation because it saves the ego of the medical professional in the white coat that's in front of you. So those are things to consider. But that's my quick and dirty live about weight loss and weight gain for women over 40. Why it probably happens, what your interventions may be in terms of your nutrition, how you can intervene on your own behalf in terms of your exercise. And if you missed a lot of this, just DM me the word replay. Fitness Jones Training, I'm sure it's right up here somewhere. I don't know how this thing shows up. But just DM me the word replay and I'll be happy to send you a link to this video. I hope you are having a magnanimous World Menopause Day. I hope you feel loved and seen and heard and empowered. And I hope that you are getting all the information that you need to enjoy this time of your life where so much of the fitness and wellness community and so much of the medical community seems to sort of toss folks aside here. And my colleagues and I are not here for that energy. We're here to support you and make sure that you're informed so that we are not making decisions for you. Nobody is. We want your decisions to be informed, though. So it's our job to inform you here. I'll be back tomorrow. I won't be back with a live session, but hopefully I'll just be back tomorrow, generally speaking. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions, send me a DM. I'll be enrolling next week for my 12-week signature program called Women's Liberation Movement, where we can address all of this stuff that seems so confusing and it seems like nobody's talking about it. That's the program that you should enroll in to bring yourself up to speed so you can thrive through your specific, highly individualized menopause journey. Until next time, let's keep it simple.